Sold like property, she fled into the desert until a warrior's love changed everything. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The night sky loomed heavy over the village, the faint starlight barely able to pierce through the oppressive heat, still radiating from the sand. Inside the Nasser family's home, the old clock had just struck a few minutes past 3 in the morning. The house lay in stillness, but not Amira. Her swollen eyes burned from hours of weeping, and her trembling hands gripped the handle of a water pitcher. Her heart pounded wildly, breath catching in her throat. The wedding dress hanging on her mother's bedroom door seemed like a cruel shadow mocking her fate. In only a few short hours, she would be handed over to Faisal Karim, a man old enough to be her grandfather. Just 20 years old, her future had been bartered away in a rushed and sordid deal. Her father had arranged the marriage hastily, calling it an honorable agreement, yet never explaining the secrecy, never allowing the women of the household to question it. Amira tried to tell herself she could endure it, that perhaps the life of a wife wouldn't be as bleak as it seemed. But fear gripped her harder than any faint hope. Deep inside, she knew her words and wishes meant nothing. To her father, she had always been a burden, born a daughter where he had wanted a son. There had never been love, only cold disdain. Wrapped in formal courtesy, a faint murmur broke the silence. It came from her father's study on the lower floor. Barefoot, Amira crept down the hallway and slowly descended the stairs, her pulse quickening with every step. The muffled voices were unmistakably those of her father and Faisal. Pressing her ear to the door, she listened. After the honeymoon, her father was saying in a low tone, she will be handed over to Adil Sarf. He's already paid triple for a virgin. A chilling pause followed. What if she finds out? Asked Faisal. She won't, her father replied. A wife is property. If she resists, she disappears like so many others. The deal is done. Amira's world shattered. A wave of nausea rose in her throat, her knees buckling beneath her. She would not be a bride. She would not be a wife. She would be a commodity, traded among men she had never met. The wedding was nothing more than a facade. The real transaction would begin later. The cold laughter of the two men cut through her heart like knives. The words echoed in her mind. Run. Run or lose herself completely. Back in her room, Amira collapsed onto the floor, racked with sobs. There was no longer any doubt. Staying meant surrendering to a life of servitude and degradation. She lifted her gaze toward the window. Beyond the house walls, the desert stretched endlessly under the full moon. Harsh, merciless, but free. The decision rose from somewhere deep inside her. Wiping her face, she began to prepare. She dressed in a worn brown tunic, slipped on her sturdy sandals. From the knitstand, she took her grandmother's necklace, an old charm of protection, the only gift ever given with true affection. She kissed the cool metal and whispered a quiet apology, gathering what little she could. A scrap of dry bread, a small knife, a leather pouch with a bit of water. It wasn't enough, but it was all she had. Better to die her own woman than to live as someone's property. With effort, she opened the window. A blast of hot wind and grit swept in, 3 meters to the ground. Drawing a deep breath, she jumped. The sand broke her fall, though her knees throbbed with pain. There was no time for it. Rising quickly, she cast one last look at the house, shuttered windows, darkened rooms. She began to move, first at a walk, then into a clumsy run. Each step was a defiance against the fate forced upon her. The dunes shifted underfoot, swallowing her steps. The chill of the night seeped through the thin fabric of her tunic. Her thirst was already burning her throat. Amira took the smallest sip of water, knowing it would have to last. The desert was vast. She had no clear path, no certain destination. but she had to try. Then came the shouts in the distance. Find her! The alarm had been raised. Points of light flickered on the horizon. Torches. Panic surged through her. She ran. She ran until her lungs burned. The pounding of hooves echoed in the wind. Heavy horses, armed men. The voices drew closer. Amira stumbled, fell, forced herself up again. Her breaths came in gasps, strength draining fast. Ahead, a jagged outcropping of rocks broke the endless sea of sand. A hiding place. She wedged herself into the crevice, clutching her necklace tightly against her chest. The sounds of the pursuit grew louder, hooves grinding to a stop nearby. The men dismounted, voices close now. Her tracks end here. Amira held her breath, her heart thundering so loudly she feared it would give her away. The men searched, argued quietly, then drifted away. Silence returned. Exhaustion hit her like a wave. Her limbs gave out, her vision blurred. The last thing she saw was the night sky spinning above and the glint of her necklace slipping from her fingers. If this was her end, at least she had chosen it for herself. The rising sun streaked the sky with shades of deep crimson and gold as the desert slowly stirred to life. The dunes seemed to breathe under the growing light, subtle sounds carrying through the crisp morning air. The wind sweeping trails of glittering sand, small shadows shifting among the rocks. Khalid al-Faraj moved steadily along a faint track, guiding his camel with practiced ease. His face, weathered by years of sun and sand, bore the quiet vigilance of a man who had learned to expect danger at any turn. Every muscle in his body remained ready, his sharp brown eyes scanning constantly. He had lived in this harsh land for years now, far from the trade caravans, the cities, and the tangled politics of men. The clan he led followed their own rhythm, moving between oases and hunting grounds, honoring the old codes of the desert. For Khalid, solitude had long since ceased to be a punishment. It was a choice. After losing his wife to a fever no healer could cure, he had severed all ties to the outside world. The idea of starting over held no appeal. His duty remained only to his people and to keeping their passage safe. Khalid's trained eyes caught the tracks in the sand even before his camel stirred. Small, erratic footprints dotted with dark stains. Someone had passed through here during the night, not a seasoned traveler. The steps were uneven, deep, faltering. He dismounted, crouched to inspect them closely. A woman likely injured or near collapse. He followed the faint trail through twisting dunes and scattered stones. Instinct told him she was not far now. The signs grew weaker, the footsteps barely visible. Rounding a rocky outcrop, he found her. A small figure curled among the shadows of the stones. Dark hair unbound, cracked lips parched from thirst, her skin streaked with dust. Alive. Barely, but alive. He approached cautiously, his hand brushing her shoulder with care, searching for any sign of life. A faint, broken sound escaped her lips. Khalid felt an unfamiliar tightness in his chest. The woman's tunic was plain, her feet torn and bloodied, her hands scratched raw from the unforgiving terrain. Beside her, half buried in the sand, lay an old silver necklace, delicate in its craftsmanship. Khalid picked it up, turning it between his fingers, a piece of value. It didn't match her current state. He tucked the necklace away. It would be returned later if she survived. Who was she? Where had she come from? The questions did not matter now. It was not Khalid's way to dwell on curiosity when someone hovered so close to death. Gently, he lifted her slight form as one would. A fevered child. Her body was light and burning with heat against his chest. He secured her carefully on the camel's saddle, tightening the straps to keep her steady, then set off toward the camp, guiding each step so as not to worsen her fragile state. The camp came into view after more than an hour's ride. Tents, arranged in a wide crescent, flags shifting in the breeze, the nearby oasis providing water and life. A few women paused their work as they spotted Khalid approaching, a motionless figure in his arms. Samira, the clan's most respected healer, hurried to meet him. Her practiced eyes swept over the young woman's limp body. "She's alive?" she asked, already preparing to act. "Very weak." "Found alone in the rocks," Khalid replied. He offered no more words. He was not a man given to wasting them. Samira understood his meaning with a glance. "Bring her to my tent." Following her lead, Khalid laid the girl carefully on the soft rugs inside. The cool air offered slight relief from the growing heat. Samira gestured for Khalid to step back. "Now it's in the women's hands." Without protest, Khalid left. He stood just outside, arms crossed, gaze fixed on the tent's entrance. He could not bring himself to walk away. The camp buzzed with murmurs. Women whispered among themselves. Children peeked curiously. Who was this stranger that Khalid had carried from the far reaches of the desert? Samira worked tirelessly for hours. Baths of cool water, poultices of crushed herbs, small sips of bitter infusions to fight the fever. By sunset, the woman's breathing had steadied. Emerging from the tent, Samira found Khalid still waiting. Unmoving. "She live," she informed him. "Severe dehydration, hunger, exhaustion. But she will live." Khalid gave no reply, only a faint nod. "She fled from something," Samira added softly. "The wounds on her feet, the bruises on her shoulders. This wasn't a journey by choice." Her gaze searched his for an unspoken answer. "I don't need to know," Khalid replied quietly. "When she wakes, she can choose whether to speak." But his eyes drifted once more to the tent. Something about this woman unsettled him. Something he would not admit, even to himself. Night fell, and the camp settled into its usual rhythm. Fires crackled, meals were shared, men gathered in quiet circles. Yet Khalid stayed near. While tending to his camel, his gaze returned again. And again to Samira's tent, hands moving without thought. Inside, the young woman lay among cushions, breathing shallowly but resting. And for the first time in a long while, a single question refused to leave Khalid's mind. Why, among all the lost souls the desert had claimed, was this one impossible for him to leave behind? The first pale beams of sunlight filtered through the thick fabric of Samira's tent. Slowly, Amira opened her eyes, blinking against the soft light that stung after so long in darkness. Her breath came shallow and ragged, her body heavy as lead. When she tried to move, a wave of nausea rose to her throat. "Easy," came a calm voice nearby. Turning her head, Amira saw a woman with graying hair and kind, watchful eyes. It was Samira, the healer. "You're safe now. You're in Khalid al-Faraj's camp." The name meant nothing to her. The air smelled of herbs. The coolness of the tent against her feverish skin told her she wasn't dreaming. "I drank something?" She managed, her voice a rasp. Samira gave a gentle smile. "Yes, and broth. You've been asleep for 3 days. Your body needed it." 3 days. The last thing Amira remembered was the sand swallowing her whole. Her mind reeled. Was this real? The soft cushions beneath her, the warmth of human care, all too vivid. To be a dream dot with each passing hour, her strength began to return. Samira patiently offered her sips of water and spoonfuls of nourishing broth, never rushing, only watching. The wounds on Amira's hands and feet, the raw skin burned by sun and wind, told the truth of her ordeal. She had fled for her life. On the third evening, Amira was able to sit up with help. Samira brought clean garments, helping her dress with gentle hands. "When you're strong enough, you may go outside. For now, rest. No one here will harm you." Amira nodded weakly, taking in every detail of the tent. The woven rugs beneath her, simple cushions. And there, on a small tray, lay something achingly familiar. Her grandmother's necklace. Her chest tightened. "Where?" she whispered. Samira answered softly, "It was with you." Khalid kept it safe. Amira's fingers brushed the cool metal. It was the first time in days she felt something close to safety. That night, as Samira opened the tent's flap to let in the evening breeze, Amira caught her first glimpse of the camp. Tents arranged with care, children darting between them, men tending animals. And at the heart of it all, a figure that stood apart, tall, commanding, every movement resonating with quiet strength. Khalid. She knew, instinctively. Her gaze followed him before she could stop herself. There was something about him. Not just presence, but something older, deeper, the weight of past grief. When Samira returned, Amira couldn't hold back the question. "That man. Who? Is he?" The healer replied with calm respect. "Our leader, Khalid al-Faraj. A good man, a strong man. One who carries old wounds." The words intrigued Amira, but she didn't press further. So much remained unknown. So much she needed to process. She chose, instead, to watch and wait. In the days that followed, her recovery was clear. Her steps grew steadier, her eyes regained a spark. Grateful for every kindness, she began to learn the rhythms of camp life. Her story remained her own. No one asked, no one pushed. The clan honored her space, yet whispers spread. Who was this stranger? Where had she come from? Alone in the desert? Samira likely knew more, but held her silence. Khalid kept his distance, but his care was plain to see. Each morning, without fail, fresh fruit or a jug of water or an extra blanket would appear by Samira's tent, small offerings that spoke louder than questions. The entire camp noticed. He had never done this before. Gradually, the women of the clan began to draw Amira into small tasks, a tentative gesture of welcome. She spun wool, prepared simple herbs, helped tend the youngest children. In those moments, a feeling she hadn't known in years stirred inside her. For once, she wasn't judged for things beyond her control. She wasn't a despised daughter. She wasn't a sole bride. She was simply a woman trying to rebuild herself. Each evening, as she lay on the tent's soft rugs, her thoughts returned again and again to the same dilemma. Should she run again? But where? Or could she stay? And with what right? Yet with each new dawn, her desire to leave weakened. Here, in this place, among these women and children, she wasn't a possession. She was a person. One afternoon, as a strong wind whipped the sand into spirals, Amira sat at the tent's entrance, her gaze locked on the distant horizon. The desert danced before her eyes. Inside her, something churned as well. Fear, uncertainty, and a fragile hope of remaining. No answer had yet formed. But one truth had begun to take root. Here, in this camp, no one saw her as a thing to be owned. For the first time in a long while, she was simply Amira. Not an unwanted daughter, not a bride for sale. Just herself. And as her gaze strayed again to Khalid, steady, silent, always near, a quiet question began to grow in her heart. Who was this man who asked nothing, and yet had saved her without demand? Spring in the desert brought more than heat. It came with treacherous winds, thick with coarse sand, turning the sky into a dense wall of swirling dust. That afternoon, the air already carried the distinct scent of an approaching storm. Samira, wise with experience, calmly directed the women to reinforce the tent stakes. The children were gathered, and the animals led to stone shelters. It will last all night, she warned. The sky darkened quickly, a sickly yellow hue settling over the dunes. When the winds finally rose with piercing howls, everyone gathered. Inside the main tent, the largest, sturdy shelter in the camp, Men and women crowded together in the tight space. The younger children whimpered, frightened by the deafening roar outside. Khalid was the last to enter, hair tousled, clothes streaked with sand. His sharp gaze swept over the group, counting each face. Only then did he settle near the entrance, ever the vigilant leader, even against the force of nature. The hours crawled by. The wind rattled the tense frame, muffling the world beyond into unrecognizable sounds. To soothe the children, Samira suggested, "Let's tell stories." And so began a round of ancient tales and legends, soft voices battling the storms. Fury. When it came to Amira's turn, a cluster of wide-eyed children watched her expectantly. "Tell us something." One child pleaded. She hesitated. She didn't know their stories. But then a memory surfaced. Afternoons with her grandmother. Old songs and dancing in a sunlit courtyard. Her voice came low. My grandmother used to say that when rare rains blessed the desert, it was a gift from the heavens. And she would dance in thanks. As she spoke, the words seemed to come alive. The children listened, curiosity lighting their faces. When she finished, a quiet moment followed, broken by soft claps and shy smiles. One of the older girls asked, "Do you dance?" Amira gave a faint smile. "A little," she replied. "Show us," a young voice urged. But instinctively, her gaze drifted toward Khalid. He was watching. His eyes didn't waver. Amira lowered her head, her heart racing. Not here, not now. The storm raged through the night. When the winds finally eased, leaving a blanket of sand across the camp, the hard work began. Amira joined in without being asked, sweeping, washing, putting things right. She moved with a surprising energy, even to herself. Once order was restored, she slipped away to walk alone. She needed air, a moment to herself. That morning, the desert lay smooth and golden. The wind had carved it clean, a blank canvas. And then, alone beneath the open sky, her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. "Dance, child. The body knows truths the mind denies." The urge came naturally, one step, then another, bare feet sinking softly into the sand. Her arms followed the rhythm. She closed her eyes, letting her body move as it wished, not thinking of her father, nor of Faisal, nor of what lay ahead. She danced. For herself. For the freedom that was slowly taking root inside her. Her movements flowed with grace, her light dress swirling around her. With each turn, each gesture, it felt as though pieces of her past slipped away. The morning breeze brushed through her. Loose hair. For those brief moments, there was nothing else. No fear, no sorrow, no uncertain future. Only the warmth of the sun and the rhythm of her own body. But when she opened her eyes, her breath caught. She wasn't alone. Between two distant dunes, Khalid stood watching. Still, arms crossed. How long had he been there? Her heart thudded painfully. He didn't move, didn't speak. His gaze held hers, not with judgment nor disapproval, but with an intensity that stole her breath. A hunger and an old grief tangled together. Amir stood frozen. Neither spoke. A gust of wind lifted a veil of sand between them. When it cleared, Khalid had turned away, walking off in silence. Amira remained where she was, her chest tight. Something had changed. She didn't know what. But she knew that from that moment on, the air between them would never be the same. That night felt longer than any she'd known in the camp. Lying on her simple bedding, Amira replayed the scene, that unspoken look. It had not been ordinary glance. There had been longing, pain, something she couldn't name. Sleep wouldn't come. Again and again, the image of Khalid returned, vivid enough that she could almost feel his nearness. Elsewhere in the camp, Khalid too sat awake, staring into the dim embers of a dying fire. his chest churned with a storm of its own. For 3 years, he had kept to his mourning untouched by any woman, until now, and that frightened him more than any desert wind, because forgetting Soraya was impossible. Yet for those few moments, watching Amira dance, he had forgotten. And now he wasn't sure he wanted to resist any longer. The next day passed. With a strained calm, Amira kept to her duties, helping with chores, tending to the children. But whenever her gaze met Khalid's, a subtle tremor ran through her. They spoke no words. They didn't draw closer, but the tension hung between them like a taut string. Samira noticed, but said nothing. The women whispered in small groups, careful not to speak openly. Still, the air had changed. Everyone sensed it. Amira knew that dance offered to know. Audience had opened a door she might never close again. And Khalid's gaze, still vivid in her mind, spoke more than words ever could. The days that followed were wrapped in an uneasy quiet. The heat was building with summer's approach, and the camp's daily work grew more intense. Amira kept her mind occupied with simple tasks, preparing tea, spinning wool, tending the children. Each small effort helped steady the storm swirling inside her. Ever since that morning when she danced, unaware of her audience, nothing felt quite the same. Khalid had grown distant, even more so than before. He no longer left fruit or water at the tent. He avoided crossing paths with her, even avoided her gaze. And yet, his presence remained impossible to ignore. It filled the space around her, unsettling her in ways she couldn't explain. Among the women, talk about the outsider grew louder. And even Samira, who had always shown kindness, now seemed more guarded. The shift was subtle but undeniable. For the first time, Amira began to wonder if her place here was no longer welcome. One afternoon, while gathering herbs with one of the elder women, a thick band of dust rose on the horizon. Not a full storm, but a warning of change. Samira called the women inside and spoke quietly with Khalid. Amira caught only fragments of the exchange, but when Khalid glanced her way, even from afar, a chill swept through her. Something was coming. The next morning, the answer arrived. Zara, the clan's feared matriarch, had returned. Gone for weeks on a trip to a distant city, she came back now with eyes harder than stone, her presence commanding the entire camp. Amira sensed her arrival in the shift of the air. When Zara entered, a hush fell over the camp. Children ran to their tents, women stepped aside. No one ignored her dot. It didn't take long for Zara to spot the outsider. The look she gave Amira was sharp as a blade, cutting from head to toe, weighing and judging. "Who is this?" she asked, aloud for all to hear. No one answered right away. Samira stepped forward. "A traveler. Khalid brought her here." Zara arched a brow, her voice edged. "Khalid brought her?" A murmur rippled through those gathered. In 3 years, it was well known, Khalid had never brought anyone from beyond, certainly not a woman. The matriarch approached slowly. Amira stood her ground, though her legs threatened to give way. "Where do you come from?" Zara asked. "From the north," Amira answered, voice steady though barely her own. "Which city?" "A small one. You wouldn't know it." Zara smiled coldly. "Everything matters here, girl." Then, without another word, she turned to Khalid, watching from a distance. "We must talk." Tension spread through the camp like wildfire. Rumors flew. The women now eyed Amira with fresh suspicion. The men whispered among themselves. Samira tried to reassure her. "Do not be afraid. The desert keeps its secrets." But even the healer's calm seemed forced. By late afternoon, Amira could bear the uncertainty no longer. She found Samira. "Do they want me to leave?" she asked, heart heavy. The elder woman sighed. "There are voices saying so. And you?" Amira met her gaze. I want you to find happiness here. But some things are beyond even my reach." The answer gave no comfort. The thought of leaving, of wandering the desert alone again, filled her with dread. Yet staying, unsure of her place, weighed on her just as heavily. For the first time, the path ahead seemed lost and shadow-dot as dusk fell. Unease gripped the camp. During the shared meal, Zara spoke. "I will call a council of the elders. There are decisions to be made." The meaning was clear. Amira's presence and the visible change in Khalid had unsettled the clan. Even their leaders seemed troubled now, more silent than ever. That night, lying awake in her tent, Amira wrestled with fear. Not only the fear of rejection, something deeper, the fear of never again seeing Khalid look at her as he had that day among the dunes. The fear of losing what her heart was only beginning to long for. But as the night dragged on, a harder truth crept into her thoughts. It wasn't just her own future at stake, it was Khalid's as well. She saw it clearly now. If the elders ordered her departure, or if Zara pushed for her exile, it wouldn't be only her who suffered. Khalid would bear the wound too. Worse, the respect he had earned through years of sacrifice could be eroded. He was as bound by this struggle between duty and desire as she was. And in that dark, airless night, a decision began to form in her heart. If leaving was the only way to protect them, she would go. But the pain of that choice, already, it pressed on her harder than any storm the desert could bring. The morning broke thick with heat, the air still and heavy, as if the entire desert waited for what was coming. Around the camp, the usual tasks moved at a slower, more tense pace. Voices were quieter, glances more wary. The announcement of the Elders' Council had unsettled everyone. Amira could feel it in every look cast her way. Women who had once greeted her kindly now kept their distance. Others whispered in small knots. Even Samira, though still warm, seemed weighed down by this mood. Inside Amira's chest, a deep unease grew. She hadn't wanted to bring strife to the camp. But what choice did she have now? Wander the desert alone again, without direction, without strength. The thought chilled her. But to remain and risk tearing at the clan's peace felt equally impossible. In the distance, Khalid carried out his duties, his expression dark. He avoided her gaze, but Amira saw it clearly. The weight of it all rested on him too. The tension leading up to the council hung over everyone like a storm cloud dot by late afternoon. The elders were summoned to the council tent. The oldest men, heads of families, took their places in a wide arc. Zara, regal and imposing, presided over them. Khalid entered last. No one spoke at first. The silence was dense, almost suffocating. Then Zara's voice cut through it. "There are matters to be addressed. The outsider's presence, the changes it has brought, the balance of our people." Glances shifted. One elder murmured, "Never has an outsider woman lived among us." Another added, "Our strength comes from keeping our ways." Zara pressed on. "Our leader's heart wavers. It affects us all." The words struck with force. Khalid remained motionless. His voice, when it came, was low and steady. She arrived wounded, alone. Had she caused division? Zara's reply came sharp. "Not yet, but she might. What if someone comes searching for her? What dangers might follow?" The tension inside the tent thickened. While the meeting unfolded, Amira sat in Samira's tent, her heart racing. Each beat seemed loud in the quiet space. Sensing her turmoil, Samira spoke softly. "Not everything will be decided tonight." But Amira knew better. If the council turned against her, there would be little she could do. Worse, Khalid's standing in the clan could suffer for her sake. That thought twisted painfully inside her. What she felt for him had long outgrown. Gratitude or desire. It was deeper, something she didn't fully understand but could no longer deny. And if leaving would protect him, she would go. Yet even the thought of it brought tears to her eyes. All she wanted was simple, to love freely, not be owned, not be driven by fate. But such wishes seldom bloomed in the desert. Hours passed. The council ended, night settling over the camp. Khalid didn't appear. Samira brought a bowl of soup, but Amira couldn't touch it. Her stomach churned with dread. As she prepared to lie down, the flap of the tent stirred. Zara entered alone, eyes sharp as ever. Samira quietly stepped back. Zara seated herself uninvited. "You know what you've caused." Her voice was blunt. Amira stayed composed. "I never meant to cause division, but you have." Zara's gaze held no warmth. He was not like this. 3 years of mourning. 3 years of unwavering leadership. Then you arrive and everything changes. Amira spoke honestly. "I didn't ask for this or for him, but I cannot stop what I feel." For a fleeting moment, something flickered in Zara's eyes. Not anger, but perhaps envy, or an old, unspoken hurt. "Love is weakness," she said quietly, "and the desert does not forgive weakness." Rising, her robe trailing behind her, Zara left one final blow hanging in the air. Tomorrow the council will decide, for him or for the clan. Then she was gone. Amira remained, her knees weak. She knew what was at stake, not only her place here, but Khalid's future. The love growing between them could cost them both everything. Sleep would not come. The long hours crept by, her mind circling one thought. If the decision went against her, she would leave, but she would not let him bear the blame. If protecting Khalid meant sacrificing her own heart, she would do what must be done, even if it broke her. Dawn broke without sleep. Amira had lain awake through the long night, the stars fading into a pale desert sky. Outside, the first sounds of morning stirred. Hurried footsteps, hushed voices. A heaviness hung over the camp. Today, the elders would decide. Samira entered with a small bowl of dates and a jug of water. "You must eat," she said softly. Amira offered a sad smile. "Hard to swallow anything." The healer studied her for a long moment, then spoke with gentle firmness. "Whatever happens, you are stronger than you know." Amira squeezed her hand in gratitude, though the ache in her chest only deepened. The thought of leaving, of walking, away from Khalid to protect the clan's fragile peace, tore at her. But it might be her only choice. As the morning wore on, the camp prepared for the council. The elders would meet again, this time to reach a final decision. Men and women gathered in quiet clusters, voices low. Zara's constant, imposing presence stoked the unease. Khalid kept to his work, tending the animals, but the strain in his face betrayed him. When his eyes met Amira's across the camp, something passed between them. Worry, yes, but also something deeper. A bond that could no longer be denied. Amira's heart clenched. She couldn't let him lose everything for her. But how could she summon the strength to leave him? No answer came. By mid-afternoon, the council gathered in the great tent. The elders sat in a circle, Khalid among them, steady and resolute. Zara stood, commanding the floor. "We are here to protect the clan," she began. "There is risk. A wavering heart can cost us dearly." Murmurs of agreement followed. One elder spoke. "It is dangerous when feelings outweigh reason." Another added, "We've seen it before." Khalid's voice rang out, calm and firm. "She is no threat. She has brought no harm." But Zara's retort was cold. "Not yet. But what if trouble follows her here?" The debate grew heated. Words sharp and sides clear. Some feared the risk. Others still trusted their leader. But the tension built. Khalid's position was slowly being isolated. Meanwhile, Amira walked alone to the small oasis north of the camp, the one place she could breathe. Beneath the shade of palms, she let her thoughts swirl. The decision weighed heavy. She could not be the reason Khalid's standing fell. She couldn't force him to choose between his people and this fragile feeling between them. Lying back on the warm sand, eyes on the sky, her choice became clear. If the council ruled against her, she would go on her own before anyone could force it. And she would make sure no blame fell on Khalid. It was the only way to protect the man who, without knowing it, had become her world. As the sun dipped lower, a heavy silence settled over the camp. All awaited the verdict. Amira returned to Samira's tent and found her with a grave expression. "They have not decided yet," she said quietly, "but Zara presses hard." Amira nodded, her heart pounding. There was no running from this. Now, after dark, a young messenger arrived. "The council summons the outsider." Samira touched her shoulder. "Go with courage." Amira rose, her steps steady though her legs trembled. Eyes followed her through the camp. Inside the council tent, the elders waited in a ring, Khalid at the center, his gaze heavy with emotion. Zara watched with a glint of triumph. "Before anyone spoke, Amira found her voice. "Before you decide my fate, I ask permission to speak," she said, surprising them all. Khalid gave a small nod. Drawing a deep breath, Amira continued. "I never meant to bring division. Never wished for the clan to turn against its leader. And if my presence endangers your peace, I will leave. I will not let him suffer because of me, nor let your faith in him falter." Her voice shook, but the words rang true. A deep silence followed. In Khalid's eyes, a flash of pain. In Zara's, thinly veiled satisfaction. Amira lowered her head. She knew what she had just surrendered. The happiness she had barely begun to taste. But it was the right choice, even if it broke her heart. The air in the council tent was thick with tension. Amira kept her chin high, her chest tight but steady. The elders exchanged glances, surprised by her poise. This was no plea, no desperate appeal. It was a choice, a clear renunciation to protect the man who had, without her meaning to, become the heart of her world. Khalid sat frozen for a long moment, fists clenched at his sides. What he feared most now stood before him, the threat of losing her. Zara finally broke the silence, her voice sharp. "She shows more wisdom than we expected." A few elders murmured their agreement. Khalid rose, gaze fixed on Amira. "She will not leave," he said firmly. Zara arched a brow, her tone challenging. "Can you take this risk upon yourself?" Khalid didn't flinch. "I do." But Zara pressed harder. "Then make it so. Claim her as your wife. Give her a rightful place here, or your word means nothing." The demand hung in the air like a strike of lightning. Marriage. Amira felt the blood drain from her face. This was no proposal. It was a maneuver, a trap to corner Khalid or weaken him before the elders. But Khalid didn't hesitate. He crossed the tent toward her, his gaze locked with hers. "Will you be my wife?" he asked, his voice steady. In his eyes was a quiet tenderness, restrained longing, and a deep fear of hearing her refuse. Amira's heart raced. She'd never imagined such words spoken here at this moment. But her answer was already certain. Not for the clan. Not to appease the council. For him. Only for him. "Yes," she answered, her voice trembling but sure. A ripple passed through the tent. Zara's face remained still, but her eyes betrayed displeasure. The elders had nothing more to contest. The ceremony was arranged swiftly. In the clan's tradition, marriage was sacred, a bond of respect and also a shield. As Khalid's wife, Amira could no longer be cast out without a fight. That evening, beneath a sky thick with stars, they were wed before all. Amira, heart-pounding, wore a simple gown Samira had prepared. Khalid stood tall at her side, watching. her with unwavering eyes. There were no long speeches, no grand declarations, just a look between them that said everything. When the rites were done, the clan accepted the bond. Some with faint smiles, others with hardened stares. Zara stood apart, her expression unreadable, but Amira knew the matriarch would not yield so easily. In Khalid's tent, now their home, Amira's heart beat faster with every step. Her hands trembled, warmth flooding through her. Inside, the soft light of candles flickered across the carpets. Khalid closed the flap behind them, turning to her. "You need not be afraid here," he said softly. Amira breathed deeply. "I am not afraid of you." The honesty in her gaze struck him more deeply than any words. He stepped closer. "It happened so quickly, ... I did not want it this way." "Nor did I," she answered. "But if this is our path, let it be for us." A small smile touched his lips. Slowly he lifted a hand to her cheek. The warmth of that simple gesture eased the tension between them. When their lips finally met, there were no more counsels, no more politics. Only two hearts that had been choosing each other all along. The night unfolded in a tender rhythm of kisses, touches, whispered words. Khalid, ever patient, ever respectful, guided her with care, and Amira gave herself fully, not as a woman fleeing fate, but as one making her own choice. The love that had grown in the shadows of fear now took shape in this quiet space between them. Every caress, every breath shared, beneath the desert sky, bound them closer. She was no longer an outsider. She was his. And as they lay together in the warmth of the night, Amira knew, with a certainty no threat could shake, they belonged to each other. Whatever plans Zora still held, whatever dangers remained, their story had begun. In the days that followed, a new rhythm took hold. Amira and Khalid no longer hid their bond. They worked side by side, walked together through the camp. Though the clan remained divided, many began to adjust. Samira smiled more often. Some women offered quiet approval. Others still looked on with resentment. And Zara watched from afar, waiting. Her fight was not over. But in these first days of their life together, Khalid and Amira would not let bitterness touch them. With every glance, every word exchanged at dusk, a silent promise grew between them. Whatever lay ahead, nothing would be harder than what they had already overcome. The days that followed their marriage brought a new rhythm to life in the camp. There was no more hiding. It was now known to all that Amira was Khalid's wife. The mornings were different. She would wake before dawn, feel the warmth of his body beside hers, and for fleeting moments, the weight of her past seemed to fade. Wrapped in linen, breathing in the familiar scents of spice and sand, she was simply a woman, loved and protected. But in the quiet nights, between whispered confessions and gentle touches, the past crept back in. Trust growing between them, Amira finally told Khalid everything. The arranged marriage, her father's betrayal, the sale plan for her, and the name that haunted her, Adil Saraf. Her voice trembled as she spoke, his fingers softly brushing her hair. Khalid listened in silence, his gaze darkening. "That man deserves no mercy," he said at last. And from that moment, what bound them was more than love. It was a promise of protection, of loyalty deeper than either had expected. Outside the safety of their tent, tension still lingered. Zara remained watchful. Some clan members, still resentful, cast cold looks when Amira passed. Samira, always observant, spoke gently. Time heals much, but envy can fester. Amira nodded, but refused to live in fear. She wanted to believe in a new life here. By day, she and Khalid worked side by side. She tended animals, prepared herbs, spent hours with Samira. And each night, when the winds cooled the desert sands, Khalid would return, and in each other's arms, They spoke of everything. Amira came to understand the man she had chosen, not just a leader, but a soul marked by loss and wounds. The closeness between them deepened with every passing night. Then came the blow. A lone rider had been spotted far off, coming from the city. Samira brought word. A stranger in fine clothes. He carries himself like a messenger. The camp buzzed with unease. Such travelers did not cross these lands alone. Quietly, Khalid armed himself. Deep down, he had feared this since hearing Amira's story. Adil Saraf, the man she had fled. It was early for anyone to have found her, but not impossible. The desert had ears, and a bounty of 100 gold coins was tempting. When the rider finally reached the camp, everyone gathered. A tall, well-dressed man dismounted with deliberate grace. "I seek a woman," he declared coldly. "Amira Nasser." Khalid's blood ran cold. Hidden behind a curtain with Samira, Amira heard every word, her heart pounding. "She's not here," Khalid replied, voice unwavering. The messenger gave a cold smile. "I offer a reward. 100 gold coins." The stir rippled through the camp. It was a fortune. The man went on. "Any who shelter her will face Adil Saraf's wrath." The threat hung thick. Khalid stood firm. We do not betray the innocent. But he knew this was only the beginning. The messenger's gaze roamed the camp, lingering on faces. When he finally rode off, the tension remained. In their tent, Amira trembled. "He will return," she whispered. Khalid took her hands. "Let him come. I will not give you up." Yet the worry in his eyes was plain. Adil would not yield. And now, the clan was divided, some loyal to Khalid, others tempted by gold. A painful certainty settled in Amira's heart. The worst was still to come. That night, the silence weighed heavily. The evening meal was eaten in hushed groups. Khalid and Amira withdrew early. Lying together, his fingertips traced slow circles on her skin, seeking comfort neither the night nor the desert could provide. "If the threats grow ... He began, but Amira cut him off, voice steady. "I will not leave, not without you." He pulled her close. "You will not be forced to leave." Yet both knew Zara would not let this drag on, and Adil would not accept defeat. In the heat of their tent, amid soft words and kisses, they sealed a vow. They would face what came together. And as the night deepened, their love, forged in the harshest sands, grew even stronger. For they both understood, to remain together, they would have to survive far more than the desert. The dawn that followed carried a tension so thick it seemed to hang in the air itself. The sky was clear, but in the camp, everyone moved with quiet urgency. Conversations were short, eyes more guarded. Amira, standing beside Khalid, felt her heart tighten. She knew the messenger from Adil Saraf had not come by chance. More would follow. And for some, gold might weigh heavier than loyalty. Zara, more withdrawn, was often seen speaking in hushed tones with small groups. Samira watched it all with knowing eyes. "The hardest trial is yet to come," she told Amira while preparing herbs. And Amira knew she was right. Sooner or later, Adil would send more than words. And then, the choices she and Khalid would face would be far more difficult. Yet she felt no regret. In Khalid's eyes, every glance was full of love. That alone gave her strength. 2 tense days passed. Then came the news they all feared. Scouts returned to the camp with urgent word. A group of armed riders was approaching. At least 10 men, coming from the city, and among them, Adil Saraf himself. The council gathered quickly. Some spoke of fighting. Others, afraid of bloodshed, quietly suggested surrendering Amira. Zara remained silent, though the gleam in her eyes showed she would not oppose handing the girl over. Khalid stood firm. She will not be given up. But they needed a plan. He called on those he trusted. Some offered to stand with him. Others hesitated. The camp was divided. Hearing the discussions, Amira approached Khalid. "What if I gave myself up?" she asked quietly. "Never," he replied without hesitation. But both knew their chances were slim. 10 armed men and a camp unsure of itself. Worse still, they could not know who among them might betray for gold. By late afternoon, Adil's riders arrived. The camp gathered near the central tent. Adil, tall and commanding, dismounted with a deliberate air. "I have come for what is rightfully mine," he announced. Khalid stepped forward. "She is not yours. She is my wife." "A free woman here," Adil sneered. "Gold buys loyalty. And not everyone here craves a fight." His gaze swept the camp. Some faces faltered. The tension was suffocating. Amira, standing with Samira, felt her heart burn. She could not let her presence bring blood to this place. When Adil threatened, "If she is not handed over, I will take what is mine by force," Amira stepped forward. "Adil Saraf," she called. The camp fell silent. "I came here by my own will. I choose my path. I am not yours. I belong to no one." Khalid reached for her, but Amira, chin high, faced a man who had once claimed her. The tension snapped. Adil, enraged, ordered his men to seize her. But in that instant, Samira acted. With a swift motion, she flung a pouch of herbs to the ground. A cloud of dust rose, stinging eyes and throwing the first of Adil's riders into chaos. Khalid's loyal men seized the chance. In the confusion, Amira was pulled back into Khalid's arms. "Run," he urged. But she would not flee. Together, they fought to break the circle. Khalid's men pressed forward, creating space. Adil, cursing, tried to rally his forces, but the surprise resistance had turned the tide. Slowly, the attackers were pushed back. The price was not light. Some defenders were wounded, but by nightfall, Adil was forced to retreat. "This is not over," he vowed as he rode away. Yet for the camp, for that night, the danger had passed. Khalid and Amira, covered in sand and sweat, clung to each other, unaware of all else. That evening, despite exhaustion, the camp celebrated. Amira and Khalid, surrounded by their people, at last breathed with true relief. The mood had changed. The courage Amira had shown and Khalid's unwavering stand had shifted hearts. Even Zara, now more isolated than ever, knew her fight was slipping away. Amira understood peace was still fragile. Adil could return, but the fear was gone. At Khalid's side, she was strong. In the soft light of their tent, nestled in his arms, she whispered, "No matter what comes, I will not leave you." And Khalid, pressing a kiss to her hair, answered, "Nor I, not for anything." Beneath the vast desert sky, beneath stars that had watched over them through every trial, their love burned bright, fierce and unyielding, a flame that would not be extinguished. The days that followed Adil Saraf's retreat were filled with tension. The camp remained on high alert, guards posted through every night, eyes sharp for any sign of danger. But no threat came. A full week passed in uneasy calm, as if the desert itself had paused, mirroring the fears that lingered in every heart. Amira, though her chest remained tight with worry, stood strong. At Khalid's side, she took part in daily life as before, facing the occasional wary glance with quiet dignity. Few knew, though, that far away, Adil had already made his decision. Pride wounded, reputation tarnished, he would not return. The news came from passing merchants. Adil, spitting bitterness, now claimed he had no interest in a woman who had been defiled. It was a hollow boast, a desperate attempt to mask defeat. And then came the official word, a messenger sent only to preserve the illusion. The messenger arrived near sundown, accompanied by 2 guards. Without pretense before the gathered camp, he delivered the brief message: "Let the desert chieftain keep her. Adil Sarif cares not for what is already tainted." The words rang cold, laced with scorn. A heavy silence fell. Then murmurs rose, some amused, some relieved. The real meaning was clear. The threat had broken. Adil would not return. Khalid answered calmly, his voice strong. "Tell your master, the only stain lies in his own honor, not in the woman I chose." The messenger left, vanishing into the desert haze. And with him, it seemed, a weight lifted from every chest. Samira, standing beside Amira, whispered softly, "Now peace truly begins." And Amira felt it. Freedom, at last. No longer hunted, no longer a stranger. She was Khalid's wife, part of this place, no longer a shadow of the past thought in the weeks that followed. The atmosphere of the camp shifted. Where once there had been mistrust, now came acceptance. The courage Amira had shown in the face of Adil's forces, her unwavering loyalty to Khalid, had earned her respect. Women invited her to join their work, sought her advice. Children followed her with laughter, offering wild desert blooms. Even Zara, once so fierce in her opposition, grew silent. Pride would not let her admit it, but she knew Amira belonged here. The bond between Khalid and Amira deepened with each passing day. Their nights were filled with love and tenderness. Their days with shared labor and quiet joy. The peace they'd fought for now wrapped around them like the warmth of the sun. And then, one morning, Amira noticed a change within her. A weariness, a tenderness, a new life stirring. Samira, with a knowing smile, confirmed it. "You carry a child." Word spread quickly. The camp celebrated. Khalid's line would continue, through the woman who had braved the desert and all its dangers. When Khalid heard, he swept Amira into his arms, his gaze shining. "Our child, our future." Tears of happiness filled her eyes. After everything they had endured, everything they had conquered, here was their greatest gift. Months passed in a gentle rhythm. Amira's belly grew, as did the affection of the camp. Samira prepared baby clothes with care. Women helped with every detail. Khalid remained ever attentive, devoted. When the day finally came, a warm, starlit night, a daughter was born. Strong, healthy, her eyes bright with life. Khalid cradled the tiny girl, whispering, "Daughter of the desert, daughter of love." And beneath the endless desert sky, among sands that had once been both refuge and peril, Amira knew this truth. Love does not merely survive, it transforms. It takes root. It blooms, even in the harshest places, against all odds, stronger than any storm. The end. So, what did you think of this story? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to keep enjoying stories like this one. See you next time!